Thanks for joining us today. I'm Hannah. I take care of corporate communications for Funnel. Today with us, we have Sarah Bozarth, Product Marketing Manager of Customer Enablement at Funnel. Prior to Funnel, Sarah was on the operator side of the multifamily industry for over a decade. She's here to share her perspective on one of the busiest times of year for operators, budget season. Let's kick it off. Sarah, everyone comes to it with a different perspective and background. Can you share some of your experience to give a little context to our conversation today?
Yeah, sure. So I was on the operator side for over 10 years, and some of those were spent in a manager role at Lincoln Property Company, which is now Willowbridge. And there I was responsible for creating the property's budget. I am absolutely excited to be talking to you here today, Hannah, but I have to admit that I am totally experiencing imposter syndrome speaking about budgeting because I've been so lucky to be trained by and surrounded by so many powerhouses in the multifamily industry and leaders who are like absolute pros. So I know that if I were still responsible for budgeting a property, which I'm glad I'm not because it's such a task, and mad props to all of you that are doing it, I know I'd still be learning from them. So, but that's a beautiful part of life. We're always learning. And so hopefully somebody can learn something from our conversation today.
I like that. And hopefully, we're just able to give people who are maybe new to the process some tools and another resource in addition to the great resources that we're sure they have at their company. So,
Yeah, for sure.
Sarah, when you think about the first time you were ever budgeting, what is something that you wish you would have known or you wish somebody, one of the leaders at your company, would have told you, or maybe they did tell you?
Yeah, I would say that budget season prep isn't just something that you do in just one season, like budget season. It's a year round active prep, gathering your documents and just being mindful and prepared, taking little notes throughout. That would have been really helpful to know when I was starting off at a property.
I bet. Yeah. And I think, especially if you're new to the property, keeping that like this happens all year and not just at this one specific time is probably a little difficult. Do you have any best practices or tips and tricks that you picked up while you were doing this or that you learned from others?
Yeah, I'll try to share a few. So for the nitty gritty of like actually writing the budget, it kind of goes back to what I said I wish I knew. My advice would just be to start early. So start with the things that you can, talk to the vendors that you have and ask if they're anticipating any increases or for recurring costs that you have, such things like flooring or landscaping. You want to walk your property regularly, which I know most of you probably do, but being mindful of those CapEx projects that you're planning for the following year. So getting your bids in early because your future self will really thank you for being so well prepared. You'll have those quick wins that you can enter in, and then you're like off to a great start because you've already got a page of your budget done. So I'm all about those quick wins. Another thing I would say would be to gather all of your supporting documents into a binder. I'm a huge fan of color coding, just like in life in general, pens, sticky notes, whatever, color code it. So a good old fashioned binder, like a 3-ring binder with the color coded tabs and have a different tab for each section. So with this system, you could easily put in bids that you have or past year documentation and have it all there in one place. So I even would color code my pen. So if I was taking notes for marketing and marketing was pink, I'd be writing in pink pen for that specific section. So really use color coding to your advantage to keep everything as organized as possible. So I don't know if that was psychotic or smart. You can decide there, but that's what I did. And then I'd also say don't be afraid to ask questions and phone a friend if you're stuck and you need help. I relied on my sister manager so much my first time budgeting. They were such a great resource. So things like figuring out how much to anticipate for rental income can be intimidating, especially if it's your first time. So phone a friend, have sister manager friends or brother manager friends that you're able to like lean on and be a good resource. But all that to say, like to kind of wrap up my best practices tips that I learned, know that it's okay to take a breather. It can be so intimidating and scary, especially if it's your first time doing it. So taking a breath, walking away, grabbing a cup of coffee and coming back and like looking at it with fresh eyes will serve you so much better than just trying to like power through if you're in a spot where you're stuck. So hopefully if you're listening to this and it's your first time budgeting, hopefully that you have a great regional manager like I did my first time that's there to support you and teach you their best practices that they've picked up throughout the years. But just know you're not alone. You've got people that'll help you go through it, and your budget's going to go through so many rounds and revisions that like the first thing that you put on the paper is almost surely not what's going to stay there by the end when it's all said and done.
I love that. And I think if there's anything that the multifamily industry is very good at, it's building community and supporting each other in community. So I think leaning on each other is really good advice. What can property management companies, and you touched on this a little bit, but what can operators do to truly support their teams and ensure that there is that community? They do have people to lean on.
Yeah, so I think part of that and part of the preparation, which I don't think anyone's going to be surprised by this answer coming from me, is training, 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 training. All about a good training. So maybe a video like what to expect during budget season that they take when they first become a manager. They like watch that video, take that course so that they know that they can start preparing early and things that they should be mindful of throughout the year. Because if they start right after budget season and they have a whole year at their property, there's so much information that they could be gathering. So I feel like if you're waiting to train your teams until it's actually time for them to prepare the budget, then it's already too late and they're already going to be behind. Another thing that I think companies should do, and this was really awesome that we had the opportunity to do this at Lincoln, was to remove the manager from the property for a set amount of time during that budget season process so they can really focus in on what they're doing in their budget. So one of the best things that we did was we had a budget boot camp at a beach house, and it was so fun because we were able to like all collaborate together and work on our budgets at the same time and ask our manager, our regional manager questions, but then we were able to like share a meal and go to the beach for a little bit and like take that break that I talked about earlier, stepping away and then coming back with fresh eyes. Being removed from the day-to-day operations on site was really helpful in like powering through and getting a lot of that budget written.
Okay. Sarah, I love that advice. I think you're really showing how leaning into community and taking time to both focus and step away is really important to the process. I also think we can learn a lot when we look back on either mistakes that we made when we budgeted before or things that we did really well. Are there any categories that you found were often over or under at properties and advice that you have on that?
Yeah, I really think that's going to vary so much from property to property. I know for me personally, one of the properties that I was at had pretty consistent plumbing issues. So I would have loved to have some extra padding for plumbing repairs. But really though, ultimately you don't want a ton of padding because if you've written a good budget, you're going to be hitting your categories where they're at. So you don't want to be like way under or way over. So both of those are not so ideal. So having it be right there in the middle and being able to accurately forecast. What I would have loved is a time machine to know like, okay, how many plumbing issues are we going to have? So I know exactly how much I need to budget for this plumbing category.
A time machine might be a big budget ask, but I think it could maybe make its way in there. Okay, we're going to wrap this up with a speed round. Sarah, what are 3 words that come to mind when you think of budget season?
Ooh, caffeine, camaraderie, and calculators.
Sounds accurate based on your other answers. What's one song or anthem that you would use to pump up teams during budget season?
I'm going to try not to sing it when I say it, but I Will Survive by Gloria Gaynor, because you will survive. You're going to make it through, I promise. It does
I
end.
wish you would have sang it. What is one item that you think is essential for any budget season survival kit?
Apart from a box of tissues? Again, I joke. I don't know. It's tough to just think of one thing. I think I'd probably still stick with my color-coded binder. It was super helpful. Maybe a good hot or cold cup so that you can stay hydrated because you're going to be working long hours. And a good calculator. But a good calculator not on your phone because phones, it's so easy to get distracted. So I know this is supposed to be speed round, but I have long answers. So a calculator not on your phone because distractions. I can't narrow it down to one thing. Sorry.
It's okay. I love it. I think that those are all great items to throw in. And probably if you're going to the desert island of budgeting, you need more than one thing. Sarah, thanks for joining us on Budget Season Banter and sharing your perspective as a former operator. I think that it's helpful to learn from those who have done it and to acknowledge that there are probably great people around teams that are going through this right now. So thanks again.
Thanks so much for having me, Hannah.